What is going on, investors? Hopefully, you guys are doing well out there. That is right. It is Friday. It is a beautiful day here on the opposite coast. Last week, we were in New York City. This week, we are in Southern California, pretty close to Los Angeles. And we've got the FAANG Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday, no matter where we are, we bring you all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major FAANG stocks. This week, we are on the eve of earnings for Nvidia. It's a big week coming up. We'll also hear from Broadcom, I think, as well. My apologies for those of you looking forward to the semiconductor show that will air again this weekend. We've got some exciting topics to talk about, including on today's show. Better not waste any time. Kick things off like we always do with Meta Platforms. Start of the week at 529. Like a lot of these stocks, really just drifted sideways as the economy and really the stock market, a little bit of uncertainty. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure, on other platforms. Meta is scrapping plans for a high-end headset to target the Apple Vision Pro, which is certainly not selling at the $3,000 and $4,000 price target. There's just not enough software, not enough use cases at that level, and I think just not a lot of people here in this economy that we're living in that are willing to drop $4,000 on a headset. Now, however, I've been very critical of these headsets, particularly the spending that Meta has done in this area. But if you can shrink the form factor, not necessarily to a pair of eyeglasses like I'm wearing, maybe slightly more chunky, I still think there's a market there, and Meta could end up really being a major player there. Moving on to Apple, start of the week at 224. This one drifting a little bit higher. All of these are in very interesting technical segments. You want to stick around for that. Apple finished the week at 226.84. Now, a foldable MacBook. We've heard about foldable iPhones, maybe even a foldable iPad. Well, apparently a foldable MacBook. I mean, they do. Laptops technically do fold, but I guess we're talking about the screen here. That's pushed back to 27 or 28 as Apple continuing to see technical challenge there. They're made in India iPhones. Obviously, this is a company that has relied on the country of China to manufacture the vast majority, or maybe even 100% of their products in the past. You are now seeing made from India iPhone Pros. They're going to be debuting and shipping this year. The company is set to unveil new iPhones, Apple Watch, AirPods, which I can never keep track of. That will have a new event on September 10th. So just a couple of weeks away, we'll see the new iPhone, although we've already seen what the software entails in terms of AI and all those types of things. New AirPods could be compelling if they're a fresh enough refresh. Also, the Apple Watch, probably a little underrated. You get a really good refresh there. That could bring some revenue for Apple. Now, moving on to Amazon. Start of the week at 176, and it did nothing all the way. I mean, look at it. It's like flatlined. $177 on Amazon. Humanoid robots. You've seen me talk about this a lot. I think we're certainly out in front of this trend. I was having dinner last night and we were talking about AI, and we were talking about how, some of this AI stuff could be a bubble. We're not really seeing, you look at like Intuit's earnings, you look at Snowflake earnings, you look at Salesforce earnings, you're not really seeing a ton of AI show up there. And it's because these companies already have mature and rich businesses. For them to increase revenues even more, it's going to be pretty difficult. But here's the virgin snow. Here's where you have absolutely no revenue for most of these companies, is on the humanoid robot side, not only from a revenue perspective, but also from, an efficiency perspective. Companies like Amazon implementing more humanoid robots in their factories, in their warehouses, certainly could reduce cost and ultimately increase profits. Google, Amazon's back. Anthropic, that's a ChatGPT-like. Some people might even see as maybe even a leading competitor to ChatGPT. It, like many of these GPTs, are facing copyright lawsuits over their AI model training, as many contend that they maybe stole copyrighted material. How these lawsuits, and I'm not a copyright attorney, that's, goes without saying, but how these fall in the court of law, obviously there'll be appeals and back and forth, but how they fall will really impact how AI training goes forward. If they fall in the favor of copyrighted material, no fair use, and those types of things, well, it means that these companies are going to have to spend even more money training these models. Moving over to Netflix, start of the week at $6.78 and a couple cents. up 1.19% to finish the week at 686. Nice week for Netflix, but not a whole lot of news. Now, the company that we are all on watch as we head, I believe, just 5 days from now from Nvidia earnings. You also get Broadcom next week as well. On our semiconductor show, we'll preview the earnings. Nvidia started the week at 124, and people are bidding this one up, although it's very interesting technically. And like a lot of stocks, they can go either direction, so you want to see that. But Nvidia on the week up over 4% to finish the week at 129.37. The company's upcoming Q2 results, according to Wedbush and many, are the most important in years. From a revenue perspective, we're expecting right around $28.7 billion. The high-end estimate was for 30.5, maybe slightly under that, actually. Like, I just don't see any reason why they don't come close to the high-end estimate. In fact, I think if they don't come close to this high-end estimate, it will be a disappointment. Also, more importantly than this quarter's revenue is obviously the Q3 as well. We're expecting $31.6 billion in revenue. That would still be massive, 75% year-over-year growth. The high-end estimate is for 36, so if you come anywhere close to that, it will re-rate the other quarters after this, and the stock will likely, in my opinion, probably push or retest the all-time highs. From an EPS perspective, you're just growing like gangbusters there. That certainly could drive the stock higher. Now, speaking of stocks moving higher, Intel is not one of them, as they led semi stocks lower this week as one of their executives or a board member stepped down from the board of directors as the company is in complete transition mode. Intel needs to make a lot of changes, just firing work staff. We will talk about on the semiconductor show that they're going to reduce the amount of sales and marketing spend. These things I'll show you from a financial perspective. They're not really going to move the needle. I think you need a complete separation of the fabrication business, maybe other aspects of the company. A complete streamlining of their products would help as well. I don't know if Intel's going to be able to pull it off in time. The financials, as you'll see, not looking great. Now, moving over to Google, started the week at 165, and it was just a flatline week. It was a boring week. You could have gone to sleep on Monday, and most of these stocks are the same price on Friday as Google finished the week at 165.62. Waymo, which is their self-driving unit. If you're out, I don't think I've seen them here in Los Angeles. It's tough. I will, when we get to Tesla, I bought the full self-driving software because when my drive down here to Los Angeles, I figure I might as well turn that on and see what happens. It's only $100. But if you go to San Francisco, you see these Waymos, which will have all kinds of cameras and sensors all over them. This picture right here is very representative of what that thing looks like. There might even be a few more sensors. Well, they're up to 100,000 robo-taxi rides a week. So it just shows you that, I talk about how there is some flaws in the robo-taxi. There's certainly some room for improvement there from a software perspective. But if you dominate certain markets, I was in New York City last week. If you dominate New York City and Los Angeles and San Francisco, you probably got a pretty big business, although Google is worth $2 trillion. They probably need a few more rides than that to move the needle from a revenue perspective. Now, moving over to Microsoft, start of the week at 418. It really was just kind of a boring week on Wall Street, wasn't it? At least from a price perspective. Now, the company updated, this was interesting, updated their fiscal 2025 investor metrics. They make some segment changes, so they're moving some businesses around. It changes the business and productivity outlook, which was for about $20 billion in revenue. Now it's up to 27 to 28. Not that they're seeing any organic growth. It's just you move to segment from another, and so they dropped it there. We'll see when Microsoft reports. It will make things confusing for the next several quarters as you're trying to figure out what the revenue is going to be and the guidance, but that is Microsoft making some adjustments there. Now, the company is going to hold a cybersecurity summit next month after the CrowdStrike outage. So the company is definitely making a push in cybersecurity. We've talked about it. I've seen just some mixed results and mixed feelings about Microsoft cybersecurity products, many saying that they are subpar, but they obviously will hold a piece of that market. Now, the company is going to release that Windows AI feature that was called Recall. This was launched, and I think they launched it, and then it got a lot of blowback, including Elon Musk saying that he would immediately maybe stop using Microsoft devices, but he certainly would want to turn the feature off. Recall, what it does is it takes screenshots of basically everything that you do on your computer. So later on, if you stumbled across a recipe or something and you couldn't remember the website or when you saw it, but you could describe it to Microsoft's AI system, and through the recall feature, they could go through your screenshots and try to find the recipe that you were referring to. Obviously, for things like recipes, not that bad, but I could think of some ways this could really invade your privacy and maybe impact relationships and different types of things, depending on the kind of things you're looking for online. Not that I do any of that. Now, moving over to Tesla, started the week at 220. My wife doesn't watch the show, so I'm not just saying that. Tesla started the week at 214.55, drifted higher. This one was interesting, up 2.7%. Talked about the humanoid robots when we talked about Amazon. Obviously, Tesla has a product there. Don't think that was the move for this week, but initially it fell 6% as investors continue to weigh those robo-taxi developments. One of Tesla's EV semi-trucks batteries caught fire after a crash, and it caused a full closure of a freeway out here in California through the evening. Now, we'll see what happens, but I mean, I had the robo-taxi, or I had the full self-driving feature turned on, and I made a typical drive from the Central Valley in California down to Southern California, and I would have not been comfortable being in the back seat and not having control. There was multiple times where the system either failed or had a malfunction. Now, I'm not saying that the software is not worth it. It certainly made the 4, 5, 6 hour drive much more comfortable. It's something that was certainly worth paying for, but I still think we're a long ways from putting ourselves and certainly family members that we care about in the back seat of things. Now, President Trump is doing an about face like a lot of politicians do. You start greasing the hands and you throw them a couple of dollars and you get on their side, and boy, they changed their tune. And he's considering maybe ending the EV tax credit, but this goes against maybe initial reports that he would absolutely terminate. Now he's kind of softened his stance as Elon Musk is kind of buddied up to the former president, and we'll see what happens there. The election just, I believe, 70 some odd days away. And obviously, as it gets closer, we'll have to talk more about the implications from an investment standpoint. Now, from a technical standpoint, saw some traders talk about how you made a high back here in July, and now you're making a lower high in August. This would be maybe potentially a bearish reversal if you're not able to push this higher. Now, obviously, you've got Nvidia earnings next week, Broadcom, probably a couple other companies as well that could absolutely confirm a new higher high. You confirm a new higher high, you're continuing to buy the dip. I think even if this level fails and the market pulls back, you're looking to buy this market. You just would not be as excited as so far right now. We haven't confirmed this, but right now this is signaling potentially maybe a lower high. You'll actually see that in other charts that we look at. With Meta, that's not the case. You just confirmed, not really like definitively, but I would count this probably as at least a retesting of a previous high, confirming a new close to higher high. Pullbacks in Meta, particularly anything south of 480, is a buying opportunity. Apple, this is where you're also seeing potentially a high here in July, maybe potentially a new lower high here in August forming. That would be somewhat of a reversal. Deeper pullbacks to 207 is your first opportunity. The big one is back to 200. That's a retest of these previous highs. That would be an excellent spot. Now, Amazon, as we noted, I still consider probably in this longer term uptrend. We broke down and gapped down after earnings. We filled that gap perfectly, but here we are at the bottom of the range. If on Monday you want to step in and buy Amazon, you're bullish retail, even Amazon plays, if we have a recession, a company like Amazon certainly will make it out through probably better than some other companies, as they have that AWS revenue, and a lot of their competition would basically go by the wayside. I would have a stop loss on this one, probably here at 165. So I could see buying this one, let's say on Monday, for about 177, 178, whatever it kind of opens at. You're risking about $11 to the downside, $10 to the downside to make a new higher high at potentially 200. So 10 to the downside, 20 to 30 to the upside. It's actually a pretty good upside trade. I actually will probably put that one on Monday. I'll set a reminder on my phone. Now, another beautiful higher high for Netflix. Not making a lot of news, but we just, made another higher high. I've got Disney. I'm actually in Anaheim, California. We got Disney and Disneyland right behind me. This is the company still trying to compete with Netflix on the streaming side. Pullbacks in Netflix back here to anything south of, I would say, 640, certainly down here to 620 is an excellent buying opportunity. Now, the company that we're all going to have our eyes on just 5 days from now, on August 28th, Nvidia report their earnings. Usually they're a little late to publish these things. So 1:15 Pacific time, 4:15 Eastern time is typically when these things cross. I've sat around and waited all the way darn near till 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is pretty rare for these companies. We'll see what Nvidia does, but look at this technical chart, folks. We had a high here in June, confirmed lower high in July. Could you be confirming a new lower high here? That wouldn't be good. That would definitely be a topping pattern. Wouldn't mean that you wouldn't necessarily buy the dip on this one, but could just mean your upside is more or less limited. Now, the opposite can happen. Great earnings 5 days from now, and we are blasting probably up well over the 150 range, maybe 160s, 170s, depending on how good those earnings are. Which way it's going to go is anyone's guess, but we'll certainly be here on the channel to have our popcorn out and watch it. Now, Google found some support. It was in this beautiful technical pattern and then had this complete kind of like massive breakout, back tested to the top of the channel. This is actually has turned into a buying opportunity. We've bounced here. Now, I don't necessarily think Google's going to come back up here and make maybe potentially a new high. That's certainly possible technically. But if you wanted to buy Google shares here, I certainly wouldn't blame you. Now, Microsoft's also in a buying opportunity. Not as good as maybe about a week ago when we actually tested the bottom of this newer channel that I've drawn out. I also have a green box in here. Anything south of 400 technically on Microsoft is more or less a buying opportunity. You should have some really firm support for this one down at about 367. We're still hovering above that, but I could see someone making the argument here. This could be a low. We could come back to the middle of the channel from 416 to 450. You make a new high. I mean, it's like off the chart. I can't even see it. You're up to about $490 per share. If you're concerned about, losing principal, there's a low here at 390 or call it 400 and certainly 367. You get below 367 on Microsoft, and I wouldn't want to see where it goes. Now, Tesla is just, it's one of these stocks. It's basically just gone sideways. They have to introduce some maybe new revenue stream. I think we've peaked out, or we understand the demand, the constant demand for their car. A lower interest rate environment certainly would benefit them from just a car loan perspective and certainly would get more people into the vehicles, but I don't think it's going to move the needle enough. Their robo-taxi, as we've seen with Waymo, you can scale it up in certain geographic regions, but you're going to have other players there, including Waymo and others that have investments, and there might be a potential capping of the upside that the company is able to achieve. But you get the humanoid robot and progress there. I tell you what, Tesla could absolutely continue kind of the mini uptrend that it has been making. You would like to see Tesla find some footing in this area. Could get down as low as maybe $200 per share, making new higher high, back up at 280. Tesla's probably a shorter term trade for my taste. Folks, that was FAANG Stock Recap Show for Friday, August. My computer screen is such a mess. August 23rd. We'll be back home probably, I would assume, maybe for the rest of the year. I'm looking forward to it. It's just been a wild 2 weeks of travel. Thanks for all of your support and putting up with maybe some of the technical and audio failure that we've had for the last two shows. I also think I wore this shirt on last week's show, so you've had a repeat of that. Thanks for tuning in. Links are down in the description below. Subscribe, like the channel, follow our other channel. More content is coming. In fact, we've got our newsletter dropping next week. I'll have more announcements as we get closer to that. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck with your investments.